Assalamualaikum. My name is Muhammad Afif Firdaus bin Muhyiddin and our group will present about the hazard at the sawmill. As the table contains, that we have introduction, type of work activities, type of hazard associated with work activities, risk assessment, highlight table, GSA, and as the conclusion. As the introduction, working in a sawmill is one of the most dangerous occupations. The equipment poses the numerous hazards. The massive weight and the falling, rolling, or sliding the logs can be very dangerous. The working operation of a sawmill can also be a hazardous, particularly when the machines are used improperly or without proper safeguards. The woodworking employees often suffer from the following injuries such as the laceration, amputation, several fingers, and the blindness. Wood dust and the chemical used for the finishing products that also cause the skin or respiratory diseases. Sawmill hazards are even more dangerous when environmental conditions factors in such as the uneven, unstable, or rough terrain, inclement the weather, or isolated work site where the healthcare facilities are not immediately accessible. Next, we got the type of work activities. There are several activities that have at the sawmill. The first one we have the activities the logging and the cutting. The next is about the saving the lumber into the sheets. The next is the planning and rearrange. The next is vacuuming and wood preservation. And the next is drying and plants rearrange. The next is grading, packaging, and storing. Besides, we have a blade sharpening, and the last one we have a boiling or boiler. Type of hazard associated with work activities. So the first activity is the logging cutting. The hazard that may be caused is the logs. So the hazard from the log is the when the falling object or logs to the feet and the hand. Also, it may slippery and the fall cause the head injured. The next hazard is the hook, where the body parts injured by the hook, and the hazard is the wood dust, which the wood dust inhalation and exposed to the respiratory system that will cause the respiratory symptom. The next hazard is the fungi, which the fungicide exposure will cause the respiratory symptom and irritation and the allergy. And the next hazard is the agent on the demand work that will cause the work stress and the work stress and cause the occupational injury and accident. The next hazard is the truck, where the truck may be accident or crash, and the next hazard is the forklift. There will accident on the forklift hit or crash, and the last one is heavy lifting, where the heavy and repetitive work that will cause musculoskeletal disorder. So the next activities is the saving the lumbers into the sheet. The hazard that we have is from the saw blade, where they will cause the hand and the arms injured caused by the saw blade, or the log bell cause the body part injured. Then the hazard is from the logs, where the falling logs to the arms, hands, and the shoulders. Also, the slippery and fall cause the head injured. The next hazard is from the wood chip and the silvers or the silvers, where the splashing of the wood particle into the ice that will cause the irritation and ice injured. The next hazard is from the wood dust, which the wood dust inhalation and exposure to the upper respiratory system that will cause the respiratory symptom. And the next hazard is from plants that will fall in plants cause the feet injured. And the next is from the hazard is the noise that will affect the hearing defect, and noise induce the hearing loss. The next hazard is the splinters of the wood that will cause the hand stabbing by the splinter. And the last one is the ergonomic or repetitive work that will cause the repetitive work cause the musculoskeletal disorder. The next activities is the logging and cutting. The hazard that we have is the plants with the falling plants that cause the feet injured. The next hazard is the wood dust, where the wood dust inhalation and exposure to the upper respiratory system that will cause the respiratory symptom. And the next hazard is from the splinter of the wood that will cause the hand stabbed by the splinter. And the next hazard is the noise where will cause the hearing defect and noise induced hearing loss. The next hazard is from the forklift where that may have the accident or forklift hit or crash. And the hazard is the ergonomic or repetitive work that were repetitive work cause the musculoskeletal disorder. And the last one is from the hazard from the fire where the plants and the wood dust cause the fire. The next activities is the planning and rearrange. The hazard that we have is the plants where the falling plants that will cause the feet injured. And the next is the hazard from the wood dust where the wood dust inhalation and exposure to the upper respiratory system that will cause the respiratory symptoms. The next hazard is the splinter of wood that will which hand stabbed by the splinter. And the next hazard is the noise where the hearing defect and noise induce the hearing loss. The next hazard that we have is from forklift where the accident or the forklift hit or crash. And the next hazard is the ergonomic or repetitive work where the repetitive work will cause the musculoskeletal disorder. And the next hazard is the fire where the plants and the wood dust will cause the fire. And the last one is from the hazard from the chemical where they will cause the skin rash and limitation or irritation. The next activities is from the vacuuming and wood preservative. The hazard that we have is from the chemicals where the chemical inhalation will cause the respiratory symptoms, nausea and the vomiting. The chemical also will affect the skin rash and the irritation and also the eyes irritation and pain. The next hazard is the wet floor that will cause the fall and the slippery. The next hazard is from the electricity where will cause the short circuit that will cause the fire. And the last hazard that we have on the vacuuming and wood preservative is from the fire where the plants and the wood dust will cause the fire. So the next activities is transfer worksheet into the stove. The hazard that we have is the heat bites that the falling plants or sheet cause the feet and hand injured. And then the hazard is the high heat that will cause the body dehydration and fainting. The next activities is the grading, packaging and storing. The hazard that may be have at these activities is the sheet pie where the falling plant or sheet cause the feet and hand injured. The next hazard is splinter of the wood that which hand stabbed by the splinter. The next hazard is the light where the dimness and the darkness result in the eye strain that will causing the eye pain and dizziness. The next hazard is the ergonomic or repetitive work which repetitive work cause the musculoskeletal disorder. The next hazard is forklift where the accident on the forklift hit or the crash. And the last one is from the fire where the plants and the wood dust will cause the fire. Then activities is the sharpening where the hazard is from the break where the cause the hand and arms injured. And the hazard is from the splash from the blade sharpening where will cause the eye irritation, pain and may cause the blindness. And the hazard is the noise where it will affect the hearing defect and noise reduce the hearing loss. The next hazard is the fumes of mist that will affect the inhalation and expose to the upper respiratory system that will cause the respiratory symptom. The next hazard is the electricity will cause the short circuit that will cause the fire. And the last one is the fire where it comes from the splash from the blade sharpening will cause the fire. As the last activity is the boiling where the hazard is a splinter of the wood which hand stabbed by the splinter. And the hazard is the high heat that will cause the heat exhaustion and faintness. And the hazard is dust and the smoke where the total dust and the smoke inhalation and exposed to the upper respiratory system that will cause the respiratory symptom. The hazard is the gas switch defect where the boiler controlling system failure that will cause the explosion. And the next hazard is the valve defect where the high pressure increase the cause valve defect and explosion. And the last one is crack pipe or leakage where the high pressure and decreasing the high heat cause the explosion.
We have looked into the types of activities being done at the sawmill and their potential hazard. Now, let's look into the risk assessment. Risk assessment can be done by creating a risk matrix table. But before that, we must have two elements. Here is the first element, which is hazard severity table. We have separate the severity into 5 types, which is negligible, minor, serious, fatal, and devastating. We rank them from 1 to 5. The example column explains the severity. Let's look into the first row, which is negligible. Negligible is the accident can be treated with first aid. For serious, the accident might cause disable but still recoverable. The equipment can be fixed shortly. For devastating, the accident might cause death and irrecoverable property damage. This is the second element which is needed in order to create the risk matrix table. This table is quite similar like hazard severity table, which the severity is differentiated into 5 types. So for likelihood, we have very rare, rare, occasionally, frequent, and very likely. The ranking is quite similar, which from 1 to 5. The example column explains about the likelihood. Let's look into the first row, which is very rare. So for very rare, the accident never occurred and nearly impossible to happen. For occasionally, the accident happens sometimes. And for very likely, the accident have higher chance to occur. After rank out the severity and likelihood, we can get the risk using the risk matrix table. So the formula is the severity times likelihood. The value will be differentiated into its own type. Below here, we got 4 types of risk level, which is extremely high risk, medium risk, and low risk. The risk value for low risk is 1 to 4, medium risk 5 to 10, high risk 12 to 16, and extremely high risk from 20 to 25. Here is the description about the risk level. We start from low risk first. So for low risk, the risk present is acceptable. The staff should be acknowledged about the danger, although the risk is low. For medium risk, the activities must be planned and any risk should be managed using hierarchy of control. The hierarchy of control is an inverted pyramid which ranks from the most effective method of control and to the least effective method of control. The most effective method of control is by eliminating the hazard, and the least effective is by providing personal protective equipment. For high risk, we must immediately control the risk based on hierarchy of control. The operation should be under supervision, otherwise the production cannot be done. For extremely high risk, the operation must be stopped and the operation only can be continued after the hazard have been removed.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am Nur Shazwani binti Shahnun. I am from AS2405M2. My metric number is 2019659768. I would like to continue for hierarchy table. Firstly, we can see that there has a few type of hierarchy in this table. Firstly is planning and planks or sheets, planning before vacuuming, or wood preservative rearranging. There are a lot of type of hazard. Firstly is planks. For the effect, falling planks cause feet injury. The risk assessment, likelihood, we give 4. Severity is 1. Total score is 4. For the action and recommendation, wear sensible shoes. The secondly is wood dust. wood dust inhalation and exposure through upper respiratory system cause respiratory system. For the risk assessment, likelihood is 4, severity 2, total score is 8. For the action and recommendation, use on tool extraction on source and grinders to control wood dust at source. For splinter of wood, for the effect is hands tapped by splinter. For the risk assessment is 414. For action and recommendation is apply a coat of outdoor penetrating wood sealant. For hazard noise, hearing defects and noise-induced hearing loss. Risk assessment is 339. The action is isolate the noise source in an insulated room or enclosure. For the forklift, the effect is accident on forklift hit or crash. The risk assessment is 339. For the recommendation is drivers should be comfortable driving a forklift and should also have a spotter when maneuvering around blind spots. For the hazard ergonomic or repetitive work, repetitive work causes musculoskeletal disorders. The risk assessment is 313. The action is pacing by reducing the number of repetitions per hour. For the fire, the effect is planks and wood dust cause fire. The risk assessment is 144. The action is keeping machinery and electrical items in good working order will go a long way in preventing workplace fires because it reduces the possibility of overheating, unprotected sparks, or short circuits from occurring. For the hazard chemical, the effect is skin rash and irritation. The risk assessment is for likelihood 4, severity 1, total score is 4. The action is isolate hazardous substances in separate storage areas. For the hazard sheet pile, the effect is falling planks or sheet cause feet and hands injury. The risk assessment is 313. The action is sheet piles shall be stored in such a way that the individual sheet piles can easily be lifted depending on the sheet pile type to be installed for a particular construction phase. For the hazard light, the effect is dimness and darkness resulted in eye strain, causing eye pain and dizziness. The risk assessment is 313. The action is use more reflected light and local lighting to eliminate shadows. Okay, for the second activity of vacuuming chemical and wood mixing preservation. We have type of hazard is chemicals, wet floor, electricity, fire and fire. The first is chemical. Chemicals inhalation cause respiratory symptom, nausea and vomiting, skin rash and irritation, eye irritation and pain. The risk assessment is 4 to 8. It is isolate hazardous substances in separate storage areas. For wet floor, it fall and slippery. The risk assessment is 414. The action is use moisture absorbent mats with beveled edges in entrance areas. For the hazard of electricity, the effect is short circuit cause fire. The risk assessment is 144. It is use safe work practices every time electrical equipment is used for action. Lastly, for hazard fire, for the effect is planks and wood dust cause fire. The risk assessment is 144. The action is keeping machinery and electrical items in good working order will go a long way in preventing workplace fires because it reduces the possibility of overheating, unprotected sparks or short circuits from occurring. For the third activity is grading, packing, and storing. For the type hazard is sheet pile. Number one. For the effect is falling planks or sheet cause feet and hand injury. The risk assessment is 313 and the action is sheet piles should be stored in such a way that the individual sheet piles can easily be lifted depending on the sheet pile type to be installed for a particular construction phase. For the secondly, hazard is splinter of wood. The effect is hand stabbed by splinter. The risk assessment is 414. The action is apply a coat of outdoor penetrating wood sealant. For the third is light. The effect is dimness and darkness resulted in eye strain. It is causing eye pain and dizziness. The risk assessment is 313 and the action is use more reflected light and local lighting to eliminate shadows. For the ergonomic or repetitive work of hazard is for number 4. The effect is repetitive work cause musculoskeletal disorder. The risk assessment is 313. The action is pacing by reducing the number of repetition per hour. For the lastly type of hazard for grading, packing, and storing. For the forklift, the effect is accident of forklift hit or crash. The risk assessment is 339. The action is driver should be comfortable driving a forklift and should also have a spotter when maneuvering around blind spots like I said just now. For the fourth activity, drawing and planks rearranging. The first type of hazard is sheet pile. The effect is falling planks or sheets cause feet and hands injury. The risk assessment is 313. The action is sheet piles shall be stored in such a way that the individual sheet pile can easily be lifted depending on the sheet pile type to be installed for a particular construction. For the high heat hazard, body dehydration and fainting, the risk assessment is 212. For the action is permit rest and water breaks when the worker feels heat discomfort. Okay, for the fifth activity is blade sharpening. Blade has a type of hazard is blade. The effect is hands and arms injury. The risk assessment is 339. The action is keep the eye on the blade. It will see if the blade starts to slip or is coming dangerously close to causing an injury. Second type of hazard is splash from blade sharpening. The effect is eye irritation, pain, and may cause blindness. The risk assessment is 414. The action is very suitable PPE. Third of hazard is noise. The effect is hearing defects and noise-induced hearing loss. The risk assessment is 339. The recommendation is isolate the noise source in an isolated room or enclosure. For number 4 type of hazard is fume or mist. The effect is inhalation and exposed through upper respiratory system cause respiratory symptom. The risk assessment is 4 to 8. The action is keep fume hoods, fume extractor guns, and vacuum nozzle close to the plumb source to remove the maximum amount of fume and gases. The fifth type of hazard is electricity. The effect is short circuit cause fire. The risk assessment is 144. It is for the action is use safe work practices every time electrical equipment is used. And lastly, for the type of hazard in For blade sharpening is fire. The effect is splash from blade sharpening cause fire. The risk assessment is 144. The action needed is keeping machinery and electrical item in good working order will go a long way in preventing workplace fires because it reduces the possibility of overheating, unprotected spark or short circuit from occurring. And lastly, for the activity is boiling. So I choose is 2 only because it is 2 more for explaining and the time is limited. So I choose for dust and smoke for type of hazard. The effect is total dust and smoke inhalation as exposed through upper respiratory system cause respiratory symptom. The risk assessment is 4 to 8. The action is using dust removal tools and vacuum or spraying cutting surfaces down with water or using direct fastening systems such as powder actuated fastening tools. Crack pipe leakage for second type of hazard. The effect is high pressure and decreasing high heat cause explosion. The risk assessment is 144. The action is to avoid leakage of water. Damage caused by leaks is to regularly monitor the plumbing system. The risk assessment is already explained by Abdul Malik. Next, we go to the examples of GSA. Firstly is the examples of GSA for the construction. And secondly is the examples of GSA for electrical.
As conclusion, there are a lot of hazards exist at sawmill and they can be solved by making job safety analysis. Job safety analysis consists of hazard identification, risk assessment, and HIRAC form. JSA is very useful as it provides a comprehensive report on the activities being conducted at one place with its hazard potential, method to control the risk, and the safe work procedure to create much safer workplace.